I fell in love with my stepfather, the one man I was never supposed to look at twice. My name is Amora. Before everything fell apart, I lived quietly with my mother, Mama Titi, who raised me with strength and endless sacrifice. She had me young, alone, and fearless, sewing clothes by day and selling headscarves by night to stretch every sadi. She never brought men home. Not because she didn't want love, but because she feared disappointment, and she didn't want me to be exposed to betrayal. So when she came home one evening smiling like a schoolgirl, clutching a small handbag, I knew something unusual had happened. But I said nothing. I simply watched her hum a tune I hadn't heard in years. 2 days later, coffee arrived. I opened the door expecting a neighbor or one of my mother's customers. Instead, there was a tall, dark-skinned man, well-groomed, holding a nylon bag filled with fruits. His smile was calm, gentle, sincere. "Good evening. You must be Amora," he said. I invited him in. My mother came out of the kitchen, and the way she smiled at him shocked me. This smile wasn't forced. It was real. Soft. Warm. Coffee became a regular presence in our lives. Saturdays he brought groceries, on weekdays he checked on us, on Sundays he went to church with us. He didn't replace anyone. He simply became part of our lives, like he had always belonged. He noticed everything. "You look tired from school. Eat before you read," he would say. His care was subtle, quiet, and unassuming. Yet each small gesture dug itself into my heart. Then one day, he stopped by my school, not to embarrass me, not to pry, but simply to check if I had eaten. That day, I saw him differently. Not as my mother's friend, not as a man, but as the only person who ever truly noticed me. As months passed, I began trusting him more than I should have. He fixed the leaking ceiling, bought a new fan, took us out for small meals. My mother laughed more, her back straightened, her voice carried strength again. When he finally asked her to marry him, it wasn't dramatic, just a quiet vow in our living room. "I want to build a life with both of you. Let me be your home." My mother cried into his chest. I cried quietly in my room, feeling relief. For once, my mother had stability, something gentle, something safe. Coffee moved in a week later. Our home felt different. He swept the compound, boiled water for my mother's bath, made breakfast, prayed with us before leaving for work. He treated our home like it mattered, and I felt safe. But something about his attention to me wasn't paternal. He didn't try to be a father figure, he simply cared. Too much. Too deeply. The shift began quietly. One rainy afternoon, I came home soaked. My mother was at work. Coffee was home. "Amora, you'll fall sick like this. Go and change." He warmed water, added ginger to leftover pepper soup, and handed it to me with a towel. His eyes lingered longer than necessary, his voice softer than appropriate. I told myself it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Another day, struggling to open a jar, Coffee stepped in, opened it effortlessly, and said with a small smile, "Next time, call me." That smile lingered far longer than it should have. Little moments piled up, and before I realized, desire had twisted into something dangerous. Vulnerability became obsession. We began sneaking around, memorizing my mother's shifts, learning each other's footsteps. And I didn't stop. I couldn't. Then the inevitable happened. My mother returned early one evening and caught us. Her face broke. "Coffee, in my daughter's room. What are you doing here?" No words could explain it. Coffee grabbed his things, small and weak for the first time. My mother's voice shook the house. "You came for my peace. You came for my child. Leave." I fainted from the shock. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. My mother sat beside me, red-eyed but calm now. The doctor told me I was pregnant, 2 months gone. I held my belly, cried until my voice disappeared, and finally returned home. I expected rage, slaps, shouting, but my mother embraced me. Her tears weren't of anger, they were relief. She cared for me through the pregnancy, prayed with me, fed me, stayed by my side when I gave birth to a baby girl. Life slowly restarted. I named my daughter Hope. My mother babysat while I went back to university. Our home became fuller, warmer, happier. And Kofi, gone, disappeared. But the real twist hadn't come yet. Weeks later, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a photograph, me as a child, standing next to a man I barely remembered. Written in neat letters were the words, "You should have known who your father really was." Confused, I showed it to my mother. Her face paled. She whispered, "Amora, you need to know the truth. Kofi wasn't just a stranger who married my mother. He was my father's half-brother. He had known everything, his kindness, his attention, his careful moves, was calculated. He had chosen me because he saw vulnerability and connection he could exploit." I was horrified. Betrayed in a way I couldn't have imagined. The man I had trusted with my body, my heart, and my unborn child had been playing a role all along, a predator hiding behind a familiar face. My mother explained that she had known his connection long ago. She had married him hoping it would protect me, but she hadn't anticipated his obsession. I had been a pawn in a family game I didn't know existed. It took months of therapy, prayers, and leaning entirely on my mother to recover. I eventually found strength. Hope, my daughter, was my light. A reminder that even when betrayal runs deep, life can still give a second chance. Kofi disappeared into the shadows of our past. But the revelation changed everything. Trust is fragile, love can be manipulated, and sometimes the people closest to you hide the darkest secrets. A mistake doesn't define your life. Coming back home does. Healing begins when you forgive yourself, embrace the truth, and rebuild with the people who truly love you. And for me, that meant Mama Titi and Little Hope, my unbroken family, my real blessing.